TellyCast, the TV industry news review.
What does the production company of the future look like? And how will deepfake and AI technology change content production in the years to come? On this week's show, my guests are Matt Campion, co-founder and creative director of Spirit Studios, and Chris Ume, visual and AI effects artist and creator of the year's biggest viral hit, the deepfake Tom Cruise videos. It's all coming up on this week's TellyCast. Now, my first guest on this week's TellyCast is one half of the team that leads multifaceted content producer, channel owner, podcast creator, and a business that perhaps provides a blueprint for the indie of the future. And Channel 4 certainly thinks so, as they recently invested in the business through their growth fund. Welcome to the show, Matt Campion from Spirit Studios. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm not bad. I'm a little bit nervous about these figures, these COVID infection figures. One half of my brain is a bit worried about it. The other half is trying not to think about it too much. Just get on with life and not go back to where we were a year ago.
100%. But unfortunately, I think it might be inevitable.
I'm sure we'll come on and talk about that in a bit more detail in a while. So first of all, congratulations on your recent investment from Channel 4, and we'll talk a little bit about that later in the show. So in the meantime, give us some background on Spirit.
Spirit is a business that produces across a number of studios. We make TV originals, whether that's for broadcasters, streamers. We have a network of podcasts. And have a fully functioning multi-camera studio that is ever expanding. We run our own channels and platforms across lots of different social media networks. We also have something that's very important to us, which is I Am Whole, which is a mental health movement that we founded 5 years ago with the NHS and the YMCA and Jordan Stevens, aka Rizzle Kicks. And I suppose Spirit, as a business, is more than just its function, really. It has a purpose, and it's something that we've been driving towards, I suppose, over the last 5 years, ever since we started I Am Whole. And that is, we talk about ourselves, about creating content with Spirit. That's what we do. We try and create content that impacts people's lives for the better. And we do it through entertainment and storytelling. And creatively, we work off two words, which are the funny and the feeling. So if you look at us as a business, we make a lot of sort of comedy and entertainment, but we also make a lot of stuff with heart. And sometimes, whenever we can, we try and do both at the same time. So if you look at a show like The Whole Truth or Comedy Against Living Miserably, our shows for Channel 4 and Dave, they are both shows that have big entertainment at the heart of it, music on one side, comedy on the other, but then also tackle the subject of mental health in a real honest and fresh way.
I think that's one thing that I find really interesting about your business is that they're content with a purpose, if you like, as a broader banner for good quality content that actually connects with people and maybe spurs action or makes people think in a different way, or that's generally positive and has a positive approach. How do you do that without preaching? How do you create entertainment that has got a purpose without, lecturing or educating people? Because at the end of the day, people want to be entertained, don't they?
I'm someone that loves creativity and is obsessed with our industry, whether it be from TV or film. I love music. And I also know that I've got one of the shortest attention spans in the world, which is probably why we do fairly well in digital, because if you can keep my attention, then I'm sure we can cut through on digital platforms. But how do you do it? You're right. I can't deal with anything that's worthy or sort of informative in a sort of a corporate structured way, which I think is the challenge in content in this space. So actually, the way I see it is that we've got to create stuff that is super cool and penetrates pop culture and feels like it's punky and a bit more rock and roll. If you're into films, TV, music, then those are the places for me, comedy, those are the places for me that we can reach audiences, because they're the places where people like to enjoy themselves. And I think, quite often we'll talk internally about content, and we'll sort of say there's two types of content. If content was food, you could either have an extremely healthy meal with maybe lentils and vegetables, and that's perfectly fine. Or you can have a dessert. And obviously desserts are a bit more naughty. So what we try and do is make, something like a chocolate avocado mousse with a sparkle in it. So it's naughty, but it's good for you.
You're working across podcasts, you're working across long form and short form. Presumably you've been mainly working in the past in legacy media and I'm saying legacy media, I'm talking about, the regular half-hour long-form TV production. Take us from that world and how you've transformed your business into something that's much more of a channel owner, a podcast producer, a multifaceted media business that drove Channel 4 to invest in you. Tell us about that transformation and how you learn those skills.
Sure. Okay. Well, actually, we did it the other way around. So Peter and myself, over 10 years ago now, used to work at Endemol. And Peter ran the digital media department at Endemol. I was an exec producer on the TV side. And the final project that I ran there was an interactive television channel, which was all about driving, it's a game show, all about driving numbers and interaction through the red button. And I started getting interested in that sort of direct sort of consumer content model back then. So when we first started Spirit, the first thing we did was to retrain and learn to use our producer skill sets to build audiences in social media, because we really felt that would be the future. And we did a number of things, like we helped Sony build the audiences for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire on social media. That was our very first client. We then moved on a couple of years later to help Jamie Oliver build his food tube across YouTube. So we sort of spent some of the early years really becoming experts in the digital, in the social, in the audience growth. And then we started pivoting back into TV. And what we noticed, and it was our vision very early on, but actually it's been the pandemic that has brought the market to us, is that we always believed that as a producer in the future, you'd need to be able to create anything from a 15-second video through to a feature in order to survive. And you'd also need to know how to be able to market your own TV shows to cut through, because of the vast amount of options that we've got now in terms of content viewing. So we needed to make sure that we built a skill set in-house. So we have what's called audience development. That probably doesn't sound very sexy in the traditional indie sense, but audience development is a team of people that really understand how to build, engage, and monetize audiences that we own in the social media and digital spaces. And if our TV shows quite often come from seeds that have began in digital. So you look at a show like the Stand-Up Sketch Show, that began online. Same with The Whole Truth for Channel 4, that was a podcast. So what we try and do is, I suppose, cost effectively pilot and build and know that we've got a bit of a hit in digital, and then try and scale it. But then sometimes we can do it the other way around. So, if you make a TV show with Spirit, that we're going to be pushing to help do the digital and the marketing around it. I have to say, though, that one of the things that I do find frustrating is that I really feel that the broadcasters in this country need to become more flexible and more open to working with production companies like us, because we can make more money in digital off the brands and the IP that we create together. And quite often, some of the broadcasters are adverse to that through, budgets, lack of staffing, etc. It is a bit of a frustration, but I'm hoping that the future that will change.
Are we talking about marketing and promoting shows that that are about to go out on air? Is that what you're referring to there?
Let me give you an example. Let's take something like the Stand-Up Sketch Show. It's now in its 4th season in production, and it's growing. We've gone from a 6-episode series to 9.
This is for ITV, is it?
Yeah, it's ITV. So that's the sort of it's 8 standard and a Christmas special. It's a sketch show in a sense. It's hit after hit after hit, and so we've now got this archive of hundreds of sketches. when you look at destinations like Snapchat and TikTok, where we know this kind of content really flies, the thing is, when you understand how things go viral and how things become contagious, you have to understand how humans work and how the algorithms work. And really, the number one thing is emotion, and being the first to sort of share it to your echo chamber in order to look as cool as you can. When you think about emotion, why people share things, they'll share things because they find them really funny, or they're really angry about stuff. They don't share the middle ground, which goes back to your question earlier on about being worthy. If I want stuff to go really big and to become a hit and to make a difference, I've got to make stuff that's cool, that people want to share and people want to associate with. So it's the same in digital, where I could take something like the stand-up sketch show and I could split 1/2 an hour episode into 8 individual pieces of digital content that I can monetize. So by putting those out with a team that knows what they're doing on everything from thumbnailing to titling through to all the back end setup of a platform, we can build audience and make that show highly shareable and bring a new audience to it in a different space than the traditional TV space.
More traditional broadcasters possibly haven't cottoned on to the opportunity.
I'm not sure whether they haven't cottoned on. I think it's to do with TV's in decline. We all know that. Traditional, the way it's always worked, the major broadcasters in this country, it is in decline, and there's a pivot happening at the moment, and the pandemic has sped that up. And like I said, for us in lockdown, whilst there was a lot of traditional indies that were sitting there twiddling their thumbs waiting to find out what was going on, we were pushing ahead in digital and having our best year ever. And we also had our best TV years ever as well. But I think that the issue is that it's what fire do you fight? And digital is not money today, it's money tomorrow. And maybe that's off-putting for broadcasters.
It's a fascinating area. And I think, there have been a number of trailblazers in this area. Barcroft Studios, Little Dot, and yourselves now are really creating, I think, these new content businesses that are, providing a blueprint for the future. Tell us about the channels that you run and also the podcasts as well.
Must just say before that, Channel 4, I think, are seemingly being progressive, and we are working with 4 Studio, and I do think that they recognise the revenues and are pivoting. The sort of channels and platforms that we run. So we run a number of podcasts. I think we've got something like 10 now in our network and are looking to expand substantially in the next 12 months. We run podcasts with the likes of Jamie Lang, which is our very first one. Private Parts has done over 35 million downloads to date. It does really well on ad revenue across all the audio platforms, but also we've created its own Snapchat spin-off show, which does well on Snap. We're just about to launch a paid-for service, which gives members, much more additional content. We've done a 26-day theatre tour with Private Parts. It's got merchandise, you name it. We've found ways of monetizing and commercializing that brand, and it's growing. And we now got some sub-brands that are launching under it on the same channel, which is really exciting. We have pods with people like Otima Busi, Vicky Patterson, Homo Sapiens, a brilliant podcast. And again, fitting in with our sort of purpose-led, but in a really cool way. It's the world from a queer perspective. A guy called Chris Sweeney and Alan Cumming, the actor, have been hosting that for the last couple of years, and that's doing really well. We had some incredible guests on that, from people like Debbie Harry to Dan Aykroyd to all sorts. It's been Michael Stipe. I mean, Christ, if I ever thought we'd ever get through to having someone from REM on a podcast, you wouldn't believe it. But actually, you see how the world has changed and how technology is allowing us to create these shows in ways that wasn't possible before the pandemic, or wasn't thought of really, because it didn't feel like a normal way of life. We've got a really big brand that we've been running for a number of years now called the Lion Whisperer TV. And Lion Whisperer sits on YouTube. It's got almost 2 million subscribers. Same on Instagram and Facebook, does really well there. We have paid for members. So we have our own sort of SVOD on YouTube, where members that really want to support the work that Kevin Richardson, who is the Lion Whisperer, is doing in South Africa, they can get additional content for $5 a month. And that's doing really well. We set up a foundation for that, which raises money to buy land for lions. And he's there to protect the plight of lions. So again, that's a sort of a really brilliant brand that we've built and expanded over the years. And in fact, we're now it's now on things like Roku and Fire TV and all that kind of stuff. It's got its own 24-hour rolling TV station on smart televisions. So again, looking at ways of building audience and then migrating them to monetize in different places and to sort of spread the message.
Comes back to something you mentioned earlier on about audience development and building an audience, and you've got to be prepared in this area, in the indie of the future, to build an audience before you can monetize it. You know, is that the way that we should all be approaching this? It's like, okay, well, once I've got 1 million subscribers on YouTube, is that the magic kind of number where you can actually start generating some good revenue? How big do you need to build a channel or a podcast before you can monetize it? And I guess that's an impossible question, really.
No, it's not. It's not. You know, we've got a lot of experience having done this for many years now. It's a bit of both. You can have a video go viral on the right platform where there's monetization. So Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You can have a video that goes viral and that will make you money. You know, I was chatting to someone this morning, an old friend of mine, who's he just told me that he made $30,000 off one Snap video. That's pretty good going if you can repeat that regularly. The sort of monetization behind building your own audience and having scale comes more so when it comes to things like branded content. And also, you know, if ever you wanted to sell that platform, you own audience and data, which is obviously the holy grail for advertisers. So it's a bit of both, really. There is money today, but the big money, I suppose, is tomorrow. Yeah.
When it comes to podcasts as well, it was interesting what you're saying. It's not only coming up with that great idea and thinking how you can potentially spin that into different media, whether it's through developing a long-form TV idea or adaptation of a podcast, but it's also potentially merchandising, live gigs, real-world events. That's the opportunity, really, isn't it? And a way that perhaps the indie of the future has got to think about its ability to be a multi-platform, multi-channel IP business at the center of it.
100%. We always said it right at the beginning that we needed to create channels to market. And I suppose what we're doing is creating niche broadcasters. In a sense, they're brands that serve a particular audience that want that particular type of content or that particular talent, and they want more and more of it. And if you can grow a community around that, then obviously you can monetize through the ways that traditional media always has done, through ad revenues, through brand opportunities, through touring, through all the different ways that we know things have been exploited over the years. Board games, I don't know, fruit machines, whatever. There's always a way. If your brand feels right to collaborate and become an exploitation, then there's lots of ways to make money. And I think as we move forwards, what we're starting to see now is a sort of consolidation in content, I think, where the cheaper end of content on television is sort of starting to become the hardest fight for numbers, and the content that has the most money behind it, i.e., big drama, big feature docs, etc., on the streamers, or even with, we see some really brilliant dramas on, the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, etc., that are cutting through. Like It's Sin, for example. The opportunity for us seems to be go for the bigger swing on the TV side and then try and sort of create the content brands in digital that feel like they're their own broadcasters, that you can make money from there.
And it must be nice to be able to self-commission shows as well.
It's actually one of the hardest things to do. Because you think, yeah, it is, obviously. Creatively, there's nothing more fulfilling than being able to do what you want. And to be honest with you, it's probably the biggest reason why I went into business was to sort of try and get to that creative freedom, so that I wasn't having to sort of paint by numbers. It was much more about the fact that creatively I like to think big and to do things that sort of satisfy me. I don't know if that makes me a bit selfish, but I've always been a bit screw it, let's do it. And it's kind of like I kind of, and I'm sure other creatives will agree with me on this. I kind of feel like if I have to sort of work in a box, I feel very uncomfortable, and being able to have that outlet through digital allows me to do what I want in certain aspects. And if I really want to do it, I can do it because it's my business. But yeah, the commissioning side it's actually trickier than you think, because it's a discipline that as a producer, it's not something that sits naturally with a producer. And obviously we sort of work with commissioners, and it's a skill set that you need to bring in. And actually we have done, we've brought in, we have an internal commissioner now, which keeps us on the right track, knowing that we've created a set of guidelines for the channels that we own and operate, and nothing can go outside of those. And it's about understanding. Commissioning now becomes data-led. It's not so much like the old days. Although, I suppose you could argue that TV channels have insight and understand their audience. They do a lot of focus groups and all that kind of stuff. But actually, we're much more data-led now, because we've got graphs that tell us whether things work or not.
And you've got the data, and whereas if you're producing, for Netflix or whoever, or many of the other big major SVODs, they're not going to share any of that data. Although there seems to be a bit of a movement towards them being willing to share a little bit. I think they have to, right? Because a lot of the AVODs are now partnering with producers and being completely open with the figures, and people going into this is in a much more of a partnership way. So presumably the direction of travel will be that the major SVODs have got to share data with producers. I mean, do you think that's inevitable?
For success, it should be 100%. I mean, we have heard that, like Netflix. The slight fear from a creative perspective and being a producer on the indie sector is that, there's a lot of noise about Netflix using their own data to create their shows internally and then commission a producer to make it, which then goes back to what I was saying earlier on. Then you work for hire. That's like working in advertising, I suppose. You're sort of being told what to make. You're told how to paint by numbers. If they were to give you a Breaking Bad, you're not going to turn that down, are you? This world thrives off creative thinking, and whilst data is there to sort of help steer, I prefer to keep it there. It's sort of like data should be there to give you the insight and the knowledge, but then you've got to be able to put the human creativity on top of that in order for it to be relatable and for it to be authentic.
What about the Channel 4 investment? What are the implications of that for Spirit? What is that going to help you achieve?
A number of things, really. We are a modern producer. The studio's model is fairly different to just a straightforward indie, producing in a certain genre or multi-genre. What we've been working towards is being able to scale the business to become a sort of a powerhouse indie, really, of the future. This world's tough enough as it is, and we want to be able to spread a bit of joy and to help people think a little bit about how they are as humans, whether that's mental health, racism, disability, whatever it is. We want to be able to tackle those things, because those are the things that sort of are becoming the forefront of our lives, those subject matters. And for us, that's a real interesting point. So in order to be able to scale our mission to do that, we need an investment. And the investment will pay for, things like a senior team. It will pay for content. Some of that will become our own internal commissioning budget. It will also, help us scale operations in terms of the podcast network.
I guess, the sort of senior team that you're bringing in might be not the sort of usual team that a typical producer would bring in. I mean, I was thinking when you were talking earlier about, maybe at some point you'll be bringing a head of licensing, somebody who's commercially minded to exploit all the different IP that you have. Is that something that you'd be planning in the future, as well as maybe commissioners and bringing these sort of experts on board?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the sort of first port of call is to build out our creative team. I think, we really have a real ambition to be 50-50 here. So, and we're making strides in scripted as well as unscripted. Previously, we've had to do it all. And the skill set has had to sit across what we call team spirit. And everyone has to understand a bit about, how you can create a piece of IP and it can fly off in different directions. And then how you monetize that, whether it's through a television commission, a funded film, a digital commercialization or whatever. But actually, once we've got that team in place, then the next thing to do is start looking at building out the digital team in a much bigger way than we've had before. And the investment allows us to be a bit more targeted with people that really know what they're doing. So, yes, you're right. We are looking for to bring in 1 or 2 commissioners that will oversee our portfolio of channels. We will be looking for salespeople and like you said, licensing. It's that real expertise in digital of knowing how to monetize the content that you're making today, but then also once it becomes archive, how to monetize that further for years to come, whether that's distributing it to international platforms, channels, whether it's selling it as UGC clips or whatever for other TV shows. If you own that content, which we do and which we will do more of, then you've got to make that content work as hard as it can to bring in the revenues.
Fascinating stuff. Perhaps the blueprint for the future. Before we come on to your story of the week, Matt, tell us about I Am Whole.
Yeah, so I Am Whole is something that we set up in 2016. We got briefed by the NHS to create a campaign to challenge the stigma surrounding young people, mental health in young people. And at the time, I'd been working with Rizzle Kicks. We'd brought back Trigger Happy for Channel 4 on All 4, and which was sort of their hero digital commission at the time. That became a TV show as well. And we'd been working with Rizzle Kicks to do a collaboration. We used some of their music in the show. We made a sort of Trigger Happy style music video for them. And this goes back to my point at the very beginning about, worthy versus not. Right? I Am Whole is totally not worthy. I was told that young people, the only way that the NHS were reaching young people and their mental health was to put pamphlets in GP surgeries. And I said to the commissioner at the time, I said, look, do you think you would consider doing a music video? Has the NHS ever done a music video? And she said, no, but we would consider it. And I said, because I really feel like that is the language that young people will understand. They're not going to, no sort of teenager is going to pick up a pamphlet in a GP surgery and go, oh, I must really think about my language around my friends, about whether I call them crazy or psycho or whatever. Jordan Stevens, one half of Rizzle Kicks, had written this album called Wildhood, this solo album, and he sent me some of the music for us to use on Trigger Happy because it was kind of indie melancholy, which was sort of our sort of formula on Trigger, which is to make these really funny sort of big silly scenes, but then to marry it with really depressing music, which is a sort of a bittersweet something about it, which is probably the formula why it was so successful first time around. Anyway, Jordan had written this song called Whole, which was all about him spiraling into his own depression. I listened to it and thought that could be a brilliant thing for us to launch a campaign with. And I had this dream about drawing a circle on your hand and taking what's now called the circle selfie, and for people to sort of talk about their mental health openly. So we created this music video, which was all about circles, and had like 50 young people that had all suffered with mental health issues star in it, including Jordan, obviously, the star of the song and the writer. And this sort of brand symbol of this circle on the hand. And the circle sort of means, community, unity. It represents the cyclical nature of life, that things keep changing, things keep moving, things can improve. So if you are really struggling with your mental health, you have to know that things won't stay the same forever. And it's become a really powerful thing, that symbol, because we packaged the whole thing together with a campaign film, and we managed to get an absolute army of celebs to back it, from Ed Sheeran, James Corden, Liam Gallagher, etc. backed it. And we launched on World Mental Health Day in 2016. And it was meant to be a project that was local to Brighton and Hove, where I now live. and where Jordan grew up. And it went huge, and we reached over 120 million people, and even got mentioned in the Houses of Parliament.
I came across this through your TED Talk, where you go into much more detail, and I'm going to post a link in the episode description to your TED Talk, because I think it was really inspiring, and you tell the full story. We probably haven't got time for it now, but the full story on that TED Talk. So as I say, I encourage people to go and have a look at that. It's fantastic. Now it's that time in the show where Matt gets to nominate his story of the week, the TV industry news that's caught his eye in the past 7 days. What's your story of the week, Matt?
When I look at my social feeds and all my friends in the industry are talking about, is this Alec Baldwin movie where the DOP's been shot accidentally, which is a real tragedy.
It's unbelievable, really, I think. And obviously now the blame game is starting, isn't it? And you see lots of articles in TMZ and Deadline, and everybody's trying to get to the bottom of how it actually happened. At the end of the day, it sounds like negligence on set, doesn't it?
Do you know what's interesting is literally last Wednesday, I went into London to meet about a new drama we're developing, and we were all talking about, and a couple of big name actors were talking about the fact that the strike in America with IATSE was looking close to happening. And there's actually an Instagram feed called IA Stories, IA_stories, which when you go into it, it's sort of anonymous, and some have gone public, but stories about the industry and about how the hours are long. I read one that's really sad about a guy who says that he on a Sunday night, he kisses his kids good night, knowing that he's not going to see them again until the following Saturday morning, because he has to go and work on set and work 16 to 18-hour days, and he's working away. And the stories about people falling asleep at the wheel and all sorts of stuff, because everyone's being pushed and working these ridiculously long hours because of budgets and timings and the demand on content, and the fact that there's not enough people in the industry to cover all positions. And then what happens there, you see, is this very sadly, we then see this story a couple of days later of someone that's actually lost their life because of it. And that's because of the fact that, we've got people that just don't have the experience in the industry. And they talked about the gun being cold, didn't they?
Yeah.
And it had been announced that it was cold so they could crack on with the shot, and it wasn't. Someone has really, really tragically lost their lives because of it. And you have to start thinking that actually something really has to be done. And this isn't just sort of the American movie scene. You see this across lots of productions. And I know that even with us, our teams have to work extremely hard and often long hours in order to deliver something that, of quality that we're happy with as a producer, and also the broadcaster is going to be happy with. And I just do wonder, we try and be, because of I Am Whole and what we stand for, we try and be and put into place, lots of things for well-being for our teams. And I'm sure there's lots of other indies that are doing that these days. But it still doesn't change the hours that people have to work.
We're seeing all of this, the result of COVID, the result of massive, insatiable demand for content around the world, and not enough people now to actually supply, the content and work on it. So at the end of the day, as you say, perhaps the wrong people are doing the wrong jobs, and people with not enough experience are doing jobs, and the people that are, they're working super long hours. So hopefully this is something that will be addressed in the industry as a whole.
I read something on the weekend, which was like, if you look at, say, someone like Sky, who has, the rights to lots and lots of sports, and then they're competing against other platforms, streamers, broadcasters, etc. You can see how that the sports industry can suddenly suck up 80% of the cameramen out there. Especially when you think about the fact that like a Euros or a World Cup or something comes around, Olympics, literally we just get sucked up. So then what you've got is you haven't got enough camera people left to cover all the other shows that are being made in the industry. So then we're starting to, will quality look. There's the biggest worry here is mental health and even loss of life. Now, look, that is such a I know I've said it already, the word, but it is a massive tragedy that this young woman has lost her life and left behind her husband and son. It's really, really, really sad. But, think of the mental health and just the lifestyle of people. I mean, who wants to be working 16-hour days, sort of 5 or 6 days a week? It's just not, it's not human, is it? Do you know what I mean?
No.
Whilst we all love being in our industry and being creative and creating these things that entertain everybody, we shouldn't be killing ourselves for it.
Quite right. Well, I think this probably deserves its own show, a discussion about this, because we're hearing more and more about this sort of thing going on set and just the pressure that people are under. So I think maybe that's something we'll look at on a separate show. And now it's time for your hero of the week, Matt. Who are you nominating as hero of the week?
I did want to do something more funny than this because that is more my nature. But actually, and I know we've heard this lots of times, but until it affects you directly, you don't really realise just how brilliant the NHS are. And if any of you do watch my TED Talk, you will see that I grew up having a difficult relationship with my dad. And then, funny enough, the TED Talk changed everything. And the last 2 years, we've had a brilliant relationship. And unfortunately, about 8 weeks ago, my dad contracted COVID. He's 70, double jabbed, but ended up in an induced coma for a number of weeks. And we were told on a couple of occasions that they didn't think he would make it. But anyway, long story short, he has pulled through and he is slowly recovering. And I think it will take months, if not a year or so. And he's certainly not out of the woods. But what I would say is that the NHS were unbelievable in their care for him. And you have to realise just how overstretched, and you don't, until you see it firsthand and live with it on a daily basis, like I have over the last 2 months, I don't think you really grasp just what's happening there, what it's like. And I know because we've had to fight to keep him in the same wards because they've got critical patients coming in and they need the beds. We've seen a number of people die because they didn't believe in the vaccinations. A 30-year-old, very, very sad. So I don't want to get into a big anti-vax argument about it, but anyway, the NHS are brilliant, and they are definitely my hero of the year.
Quite right. And who or what are you putting in the bin, Matt?
Well, probably based on our conversations, though, let's put COVID in the bin because that's just something that has absolutely ruined everybody's lives. But also, let's put poor working conditions in the bin and hope that content funders, broadcasters, etc., the powers that be, start trying to think about how we can change things to make them better conditions for those that are producing brilliant work.
Quite right. Matt, thank you so much. It's been fascinating to talk to you. We could talk a lot more about the different shows and the different business models that you're working across, all your different facets of your business at Spirit. But thank you so much for coming on. We'll definitely do another show about working conditions and stress and all of the implications of that. So thanks for that idea. We'll see you very soon.
Thanks very much.
Hey, listen up, sports and TikTok fans. If you like what you're seeing, just wait till what's coming next.
So sticking with the theme of content production in the future, I'm delighted to be joined by the man behind this year's biggest viral sensation, the Tom Cruise deepfake videos. Welcome to the show, visual and AI effects artist, Chris Ume. Chris, how are you doing?
Hello, Justin. Thanks for having me. Everything's fine. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Now, you're in Bangkok right now, is that right?
Yeah, I live here.
Well, we'll come and talk a little bit about that and why you're there and a little bit about your new company in a little while. I guess you've become the star of the deepfake movement, if you like, production since the Tom Cruise videos, which are amazing. You've been on 60 Minutes, CNN, whole range of other major media outlets. How has your life changed since, when was it, February, when you produced and started to distribute these videos?
Prior to the Deep Tom Cruise stuff, I was working in for Sapar, Deep Voodoo. It's a studio by Matt Stone and Trey Parker. And when the videos of Deep Tom Cruise came out in February, it was like a roller coaster. So many things happened. I mean, I've been overwhelmed with emails and requests, and that made me think about how to proceed, because I want to guide this technology in an ethical way, and how this technology could be used in creative ways going forward. So my life has changed totally, and I'm sure I'll be able to explain a bit to you how and what. But yeah, it's not been the same since then.
Oh, I bet. So tell us about how you produced and distributed the Tom Cruise videos. These all started on TikTok, right? Take us through how and why you produced these, and what happened next.
Back in December of last year, that's when I got contacted by Miles Fisher. He's the actor. He's the guy impersonating Tom Cruise and doing all these sketches. He saw one of my videos and he asked me like, hey, I'm doing this video, Tom Cruise running for president. It was a parody, it was something funny. And he asked me like, could we work together? And at the end of the video, I take off my mask and it's like Tom Cruise, but obviously it's not the real one. I said like, yeah, of course, let's do it. So I worked with him together on this project. And 2 months later, and it was, I think, the end of January, he came back to me. He said like, this was a really fun collaboration. I really like working with you. Do you think maybe we could make some fun videos? Just Tom Cruise standing in the garden, talking about something random. So like, yeah, let's do it. I trained the model, I worked on it, so let's do it. And we created one video, Tom Cruise standing in the garden, just saying something. And I sent it to him. And 2 days after that, he sent me back a screenshot of a TikTok channel where he posted this video, and it had like 2.5 million views and 45,000 followers. And he told me like, we have to talk. So we had to chat. The comments were really positive. People were really wondering like, hey, what's going on? So we just decided like, let's continue. Let's make some new videos, some fun content. Tom Cruise doing a magic trick. And after the second video, it just exploded. So he sent me another message like, we have to talk again. And the same thing happened with the third video and the fourth video. It was unbelievable what was happening. And then we came at a point like they were trying to find out who was behind this channel, and it was a really difficult period as well, because at the same time you had a lot of journalists and a lot of articles coming out saying this technology is dangerous. It just, you press one button and this is what comes out. And for me it was really difficult, because what do? Are you going to face the press? Are you going to face the journalists and talk about it and educate them? Like, this is not easy to create, this high quality level of the hyper realistic videos we're creating. It's not easy to get to that point, because one, you need an expert like someone with expertise like me in AI and VFX. I also have the hardware to create these kind of things. I spent tons and tons and tons of time creating these things. And at the same time, you also have the actor Miles Fisher. He's one of the world's best Tom Cruise impersonators. He knows how he moves, how he smiles, how he talks, and he looks like him. So it's not easy to get to this level of hyper realistic content. It was really difficult, and I thought about it, and that's when I decided, together with my brother, like, let's face the media, let's talk about it, let's talk about our intentions, where we believe this technology will be going, and let's raise awareness at the same time. So I've never done one interview, and then suddenly we had 40 interviews planned in 2 days.
Right.
With all type of TV channels, magazines, from Japan to France to America, CNN, CNET, Vice, all of them. And it was unbelievable. It is an unbelievable journey, and that's where it all started.
Yeah, well, it is incredible. Now, how many Tom Cruise videos have you produced now? So I'm interested in not only and we'll come on to the production in a little while, but the distribution. You say that went through Miles Fisher's his own channel to begin with. Is that the place that it was distributed from every time, or did you have a different distribution strategy going forward? So
no, there was one video. The first video, like it's a project that Miles did himself. That was on his channel, but it has nothing to do with Deep Tom Cruise. It was just something we did. It's a separate project. And the first Deep Tom video was on TikTok Deep Tom Cruise. That's where the first video was launched. And
Right.
I'm not sure how many videos we have right now. I think we have something like 15 or 16. Not sure about the numbers. We put a few of the videos we didn't like afterwards. We put those in private, but they might still be circling around somewhere. But that's where we're at right now.
So talking about the production, so you mentioned that you had an actor, Miles, who is already a Tom Cruise impersonator, who creates the movement and the physical aspect, I suppose. How do you then go about creating that deep fake of Tom Cruise, the real Tom Cruise, and then I suppose what do you just superimpose it onto his face, or how does that work?
What I did, I gathered tons and tons of images and videos of the real Tom Cruise, and I put it into this deepfake computer model. It's a model I've been training for 2 months prior to when I added all the Tom Cruise data on top of it. And on the other side, I put a lot of videos from Miles where he's doing all these types of facial expressions. To put it in simple terms, I told the computer to start learning and comparing the two faces with each other. So if Miles is smiling, the computer will teach itself Tom Cruise is smiling at that same frame. So, and it takes a lot of time. I spent 2 months training on top of that. Tom Cruise to Miles. It was a really long training session. It's training 24/7 on the best graphical cards there are on the market right now. After it's trained and after you render out the facial movement of Tom Cruise right from the machine learning tools, I also do a lot of post-production, about 24 hours of post-production per video. And you have to imagine every video on our TikTok channel is in between 10 and 25 seconds. So that means I'm going frame by frame, fixing issues, making sure it's blending, because deepfakes are not supposed to be able to do the things you're seeing on our channel, like whenever there are occlusions in front of the face and he's turning around, he's eating a popsicle, he's doing all these weird things. It's like a magic trick, and that's what makes it so special. Yeah. But that means there's a lot of post-production involved. I've been working as a VFX artist specialized in blending for 10 years now. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I was doing all my career long already. So it takes a lot of time to get to this point, to this level of hyper-realistic videos.
I can see your skills have obviously, for everybody to see, actually. How many views are we now on? I mean, because I imagine it's not only on TikTok now, I imagine it's on YouTube and various other social media. Do you have any big stats?
It's really difficult to determine that. I can imagine over a few 100 million views, because it's spread all over the internet, TV stations, everywhere. Everyone knows about it. So, mission accomplished. We raised awareness, and I think that's really important.
So what about Tom Cruise's reps? I mean, did they ever get in touch? I mean, have you ever spoken to anybody from his organization?
Yeah. After 3 videos, Miles told me, we really have to contact Tom Cruise and ask him if he's fine with it, because this is really important. And it's important to me as well. So we actually, Miles sent an email to Tom Cruise's agency, hey, we're doing this TikTok channel. We don't have any malicious intent. We're creating harmless videos, Tom Cruise doing silly things. But if you don't like what we're doing, actually, and you want us to take it down, we'll do it immediately. We're even offering you our TikTok account, because we know there is a new movie coming up, the new Mission Impossible movie, and you can use it for whatever you want. And after the email, he also called his agent, and he or she said, confirmed, we received your email, and they never responded. So we just kept creating these sketches, and still today we haven't heard anything.
Right.
But we're still open to just take it down if he doesn't like it.
That's neither an endorsement nor a request to take it down. So I guess I suppose.
Yeah. it's really important. We're not using it for marketing. We're not making Tom Cruise say things about products. We're not endorsing anything. We're just keeping it as neutral as possible. And I think that's really important, because you can only do that when you have consent. Legally wise, it's a gray area, but it's really, for me and for Miles as well, it's really important that we keep it ethically correct, if that's the right English word, but it's really important that it's satire, is a parody, and that's it.
That's a really interesting point, because obviously deepfake is an incredible tool for creativity, and your visual effects skills are incredible. But there's a dark side to deepfake as well, isn't there? I mean, I think I suppose it's known historically for porn and for malicious intent. Yeah. Where do you stand on that? It sounds like you stand on the right ethical side of the fence on this.
I think it's all technology. It mostly starts somewhere where on the dark side of things. And moving forward, we cannot avoid people are going to use it for malicious things. So what I'm trying to do now, and that's as well as with my company and with all other synthetic media companies I've met until now, we're all focused on raising awareness and trying to help Adobe. We're also in this project that Adobe is running on how to detect deepfakes, or how we can move forward, how to label synthetic media, for example. I think that's really important. You cannot ban a technology just based on certain people misusing it, because there are so many positive use cases as well. And with every client that I did and all the clients that are contacting me, they only work when we have consent of the celebrity that they want to work with. I think that's really important. Or maybe if this person passed away, that we have consent from the people who own the portrait rights of that certain person. But it's difficult, because moving forward, now you're going to have something like synthetic portrait rights. So it's a total new world we're going into, and you have to think about how to handle certain things.
Yeah, legalities and ethics are all involved, and really they've got to catch up with the technology by the sounds of it. Recently, It was quite widely reported that there was a AI-generated voiceover of Anthony Bourdain, the late chef and TV personality.
Yes.
And it turned out that actually, that was not approved by his widow and other members of his family. So I guess that's an example again.
What I heard from that was it's a bit difficult. It's a difficult situation, because the people who owned the portrait rights in this certain case, they gave permission, but the widow, she didn't know about that. So that's when you had this difficult case. I might be wrong, but that's what I heard about it.
That's obviously an ongoing situation, and it's not simple, right? And I suppose, I mean, we maybe need to get a lawyer on the show to sort of talk about image rights and, as you say, portrait rights and digital rights, and who owns certain things. But looking to the future, then, what's the future for deepfake? Because obviously this has almost been the world's greatest show reel, the world's greatest sizzle reel for you as a content creator. First of all, what's the future, do you think, for deepfake as an art form? And then tell us a little bit about what you're doing, because you're now running a company called Metaphysic.
Yeah. So there are so many creative use cases, and I'm going to give you one example. Just imagine Ronaldo, like he's one of the world's best footballers. Imagine he's the face of Adidas, and Adidas pays him millions of dollars just to have him 2 days a year to do a commercial shoot or whatever. But it's really difficult for Ronaldo and for Adidas, because Ronaldo doesn't have time. And whenever he has to go there, he calls it off a few days beforehand. It's really expensive to get him to a certain location to the other side of the world. It costs a lot. So what if you have a company that creates a high quality data set of Ronaldo? With data set, I mean they're going to capture all of his facial expressions, his face, and all these kind of things. And now Adidas has the possibility to create a commercial of Ronaldo every day of the year without needing to have him on set physically. But he has to give consent. He has to give consent to do it. Ronaldo still gets money, and Adidas has more freedom to do whatever they want. They can even have the commercial, the same commercial, and they can even translate it into 100 different languages without needing Ronaldo on set. And that also goes for his voice. They could also duplicate his voice going forward and use his voice to translate it to these 100 different languages. So it opens up a lot of creative possibilities. And I think that's just one of the use cases where it's really interesting for both sides on this use case.
In that case, though, who owns the digital Ronaldo then? Does Ronaldo own that, or does Adidas own that?
I think Ronaldo should always own his own portrait rights. He just leases them or rents them for a year to Adidas, for example. Of course, it's interesting because, of course, Adidas is going to pay less for synthetic Ronaldo compared to the real one. But in a matter of time, in a matter of a few years, you won't see the difference anymore. But it's interesting, and I think people have to realize that this is where we're going, and all these famous celebrities have to start thinking about it. So that's what's interesting about it. Maybe in a few years' time, Adidas wants, whenever they book Ronaldo, they want the young one. They might tell Ronaldo, "Hey, we want your face for this ad, but we actually want Ronaldo when he was 25 years old." Is that possible? And if he has that data, if he let's say in 10 years from now, if he creates a data set every year, he could supply them like, "This is my model, you can use it."
It's really fascinating area. Commercial use cases, adverts. I suppose you could always look at creating extra scenes in movies, for example, when the actor might not be available or whatever. There's all of those. I can see the real benefits there. On the commercial side of things, I'm assuming that's the real growth area for your business, your business Metaphysic.
Yeah, Metaphysic, we're doing two things actually. We're on one hand, we're working on a product, and that's where we're creating the technology and not just deepfake alone. Like we're creating a user interface, a web user interface where normal YouTube creators in the future could upload their videos, and they could upload their own face data to train on top of a video, or they could rent or lease a face data set of someone famous. That's something we're still figuring out how to do that. Of course, it's all ethical, it's all with consent. So it's really important that we figure out how to handle that kind of stuff. And on the other hand, we're also doing studios, and with that, we're taking on commercial projects and doing documentaries, commercials. We did one with a Swedish, with Truecaller, the famous app last week, where we worked with this a Swedish supermodel named Carolyn Winberg. She was one of the characters in this commercial, and she had this lookalike with her face deepfaked on top of it, and she was talking to herself. It's interesting. Like, these are the two things we're doing. It's still the beginning of the big adventure, but it's moving so quickly.
And that's what you're doing in Bangkok. Presumably, is the company based in Bangkok?
No, our company is based in America. So let's start at the beginning. 2 years ago, or maybe 2.5 years ago now, I was working as a VFX artist for one of the biggest Belgian companies, TV companies in Belgium. And that's when I created my first deepfake video. I made Jon Snow apologize for season 8 of Game of Thrones. Of course, I created it for fun and to raise awareness, because I was the first one to do mouth manipulation, and it was obvious that this was fake. But for me, this was a perfect way to show the world, like, hey, this is possible. Just keep it in mind. And I was still working for that company, and that's when I decided, like, after that video, it was the first time that I was getting emails for interview requests and these type of things. So I realized, like, this technology is going somewhere. There are so many creative possibilities. I have to move out of Belgium because people keep asking me to work on these VFX projects and to come film on set and do all of these things. So I moved to my uncle in Bangkok so I could focus on what I do best, just create content. And I just figured if I focused on creating content 24/7, then one day a big company would see what I was doing, because they cannot keep avoiding you if you keep getting better and better and keep pushing out content. And I think a few months later, South Park called me, and that's where that adventure begins. But that's how I got in Bangkok, actually.
Fun. And so what's the future then for presumably you're just looking to are you looking for investment in the business, or what you're obviously you said you've got two sides of the business. What's the future for Metaphysic?
Well, we started I think in May or June, something like that. That's after Deep Tom. One day after Deep Tom, I met this business partner named Tom Graham, and my brother called with him and in like these dozens and dozens of mails and conversations we had, he told me like, this is a special guy. I really have a good feeling about him. So we talked with him, and I decided to leave South Park. And that was really hard because I was working for my idols. It was really hard to leave them. I just figured like I have to lead the way, to pave the way for the technology. There are so many use cases. So that's why we started it in May or June together with our new business partner. And now a few months later, we started our investment round, I think about a month ago. And we actually are finalizing it right now. And I think I'm not allowed to talk about numbers right now, but it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what's happening, because we even thought about like, maybe if we don't get any investment, then we should stop and everyone will find a way what he can go and do in the future. But it's unbelievable what's happening. So now we're building a company. We're looking for developers, for a few new artists. It's going so quick, and it's hard to tell you where we'll be standing in a year's time, for example. But I can imagine that will take big leaps in technology, and not just deepfake, AI in general. I want our tool to be able to for a director, for example, if he's directing a movie, that he can say like, okay, actually, in this movie, I want my actor to have a mustache. I want him to have a different type of hair. And he can all do that by just using AI technology. You can decide after you filmed, then you can start deciding how you want certain things to look like. And that's interesting.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, it makes it much easier to flash back to a younger character, isn't it? 20 years previous or whatever. I can imagine that really common use of this technology.
I get a lot of requests to do DH people. So if any actor is listening, then I would strongly recommend to start capturing a high quality data set of you year by year. But because just imagine in 10 years time, a director asks you like, could we do a flashback in this movie? You can have a younger body double doing the performance, but in the end, you want it to look like the actor, him or herself. So it's really important moving forward that you have that type of data. It's also really important that you keep it safe and secure. Don't start spreading it to all these type of companies.
Agents should be, really thinking about this very seriously for their clients, shouldn't they?
Yes, we're working on a few use cases with a few A-list celebrities, I think, or athletes in this case, maybe, to show the world what's possible. It's going to change the whole industry. It's going to change the world. You have to realize that in 10 years' time, you won't be able to imagine a world without AI. Creating a movie without AI. There are so much possibilities. That's what makes it interesting.
What's the news story that's caught your eye recently? Maybe not be within the week. I think you've chosen one from a little while ago. But what's your story of the week?
I chose the ABBA virtual tour that they're gonna do, and I think it's really cool. Now they're doing it 3D. They could also use deepfake for that going forward. It's really cool, I think, because people are going to pay. It's the same like people are paying to go and watch a movie. They're going to sit down and watch this whole show of ABBA when they were young, doing these songs and maybe adding a few new songs as well. It's really cool, and I think that's something we're going to see more and more. I would love to go and watch something like that from Michael Jackson, for example, because that's something I never experienced, and it would be so cool if I could actually see something like that. And that's why I liked that idea, and I think more people are going to do that.
Yeah, imagine the Beatles. You could do a world tour. You could do, well, you don't need to do a tour, would you? You could just open it in every city around the world and have it running every night.
Yeah. But it's really important that you're handling it with respect. So it's as close as possible to the real thing. So that's what's really important to me, actually. So I hope the creators are really working close with the real ABBA members, so they have the final say on how and what of where this project is going.
Who's your hero of the week, and who or what are you going to tell to get in the bin?
I think I chose for villain of the week. But it's not really a villain. It's just stupidity, in my opinion. It's the cycle racer spectator wipes frontrunner brutal collision Canary Islands. That's the title, and it's like this cycling race. And at the last 10 meters of the finish, this guy is giving it like an extra sprint. He's going really quick, and you have this lady who's looking at her phone, and she's crossing the road, and he just smashes into her. And it seems like she doesn't have a big injury, but he's having memory loss and all these kind of things. And for me, she's not a villain, but it's just people are watching too much on their phone, doing too much things on their phone, so they're not looking around. And at this specific event, it's a real stupid thing to do.
Yeah, you see it though. You see it, don't you? Walking around London, I do, or anywhere. You see people who are just looking at the phone, almost transfixed. They're like there for sort of 2 minutes, and you know that you think that these people are in another world. It's only one step off the curb, and there's a bus coming. Anyway, well, that's exactly. Let's throw that in the bin. And what about your hero of the week, Chris?
It was really difficult to find. Well, my all-time hero is Peter Jackson. I love his work. I love what he does. So he can call me anytime, and I'd love to work on a project with him. So he's my all-time hero.
Lord of the Rings TV series is.
Oh yeah, you know? yeah. Like I said, I worked for Matt and Trey on South Park. That was like one thing on my bucket list, my idols, and now there's only one thing left, and that's Peter Jackson. And one day it'll happen. I keep hoping for that, but yeah, let's just keep working and create good stuff so he can't keep avoiding me, right?
Yeah, Chris, well, I've no doubt that will happen. It's been really wonderful to speak to you. Thank you for joining me direct from Bangkok. All the best for Metaphysic, and we'll hopefully see you in person at some point along the way. But best of luck with everything, and I'll be watching out for your announcement that you're working with Peter Jackson.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Justin.
Well, that's about it for another week's TellyCast. As always, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed a little glimpse into the future with two of the creatives at the leading edge of content production. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to TellyCast and share it with friends and colleagues. And why not follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter. TellyCast was edited by Ian Chambers and recorded in London. Until next Thursday, as always, stay safe